now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Rev Nathaniel W Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but never good night, and certainly never goodbye. This is your friend, the Rev Nathaniel W Martin, pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in Los Angeles, California. Coming to you with a program entitled It's Time, which is an attempt to draw focus and notice to the fact of the inequities that are inherent in the distribution of wealth here in our nation, and more so to the discrepancies, if you will, right straight up to the downright defrauding of the pay that has historically been issued to black people in this country of the United States of America. And indeed, when you look expansively all over the world, we are seeing that black people are still being defrauded of an equitable share of the wealth of the world. I was telling a friend of mine that the deeds for all of the diamond mines and gold mines and coltan mines and uranium mines are not on the continent of Africa, but they're instead to be found in the vaults of the continent of Europe. Let us look at the Word of God, if you will. Deuteronomy chapter 24 and verse 14 begins to tell us that thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he or she be of thy brethren or of thy strangers that are in thy land within thy gates. That within itself tells us that God is concerned that we treat each other honorably and fairly when it comes to our medium of exchange, whether that be in dollars or cents or in whatever contractual obligations that we make with each other. As a quid pro quo, I give you this, you give me that, and we ought to treat each other equitably. You don't short me on my money, I don't short you on your money. Fair enough. It says at their day. I'm using at their day because in the old cultures, men seem to dominate, but now, we recognize as men and women at this thing. Hey, at their day thou shalt give them their hire. Neither shall the sun go down upon it, for they are poor, and they set their hearts upon it, lest they cry against thee unto the Lord, and it be sin unto thee. That tells you right off the bat that God watches all of our interactions one with another. We make agreements, and then one part or the other fails to keep their end of the bargain for whatever set of reason. If you promise, you must do what? Fulfill. That's what Abraham Lincoln said. Remember, promise being made, those promises must be kept. He said in a letter that he wrote to James C. Conkling in response to the controversy over the Emancipation Proclamation, and that is what he said. He said there are Negroes fighting in our armies, and they have expectation. They're fighting for something, and he said the thing they're fighting for is their freedom. If we promise them that freedom and the promise is made, it must be kept. Hey, it follows from that that at least Abe Lincoln was willing to be fair to the Union soldiers, black or white, who fought to save the Union. Let us not digress. Let us go to the New Testament. In James chapter 5, it says, behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. You see, people forget that God is concerned about how we treat one another. A contract, an agreement, a covenant, that's what the Bible is full of. Contracts, agreements, and covenants, regardless of what language, whether it's Hebrew, Greek, or Latin. A deal is a deal, and a promise is a promise, and an agreement is an agreement. And unless that agreement is immoral, then it has to be honored. As in this case here in the New Testament, for you New Testament scholars who don't so much follow the Old Testament, you want all your scripture marching orders to come out of the New Testament. Well, even in the New Testament, there is a concern for how we treat each other as per our agreements and contracts that we enter into, whether it be written or whether it be verbal or with a handshake. One has to honor the morality of what one has promised. Is that right? And God is not a God to be trifled with in such situation. And if you don't believe in God, remember what the contemporary said, karma is a B word. All right, let's start over. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. That means the work has been done. The contract has been fulfilled by the laborer or by the contractor. And now it is time for you to keep your part of the bargain, your end of the bargain. And in many cases, we find that the government has failed to keep their end of the bargain as much as the corporation or the company, as well as many cases, the mano individual interdealings with individuals have failed to be equitable and fair in what they have promised. So that one party A, has promised party B. Party B has kept their end of the bargain, but party A is now reneging. That's what the courts are all about. Party A and party B seeking to find a area of agreement. Never mind compromise. We strictly going by the fact that if one makes a promise, one must be held accountable unless that is an immoral promise. You remember Martin Luther King talked about there are just laws and there are unjust laws. Laws of segregation were unjust laws. The law of slavery was an unjust law, even though it was codified in the Constitution of the United States of America. It was still an unjust law. Even though Abraham Lincoln said that if he could save the Union without ending slavery, he would do it. And if he could save the Union by ending slavery, he would likewise do that. So there are just laws on the books, and the same books carry unjust or immoral laws. Thank God for Martin Luther King clearing that up for us, even though the scriptures had already said so. Is that right? And these issues are the major issues of mankind. If you don't value my life, and if I don't value your life, then I'm going to defraud you at every opportunity that I can find. If there's an opportunity there, I won't let you know about it. That's why affirmative action was so important, because it meant that the people who had been denied access to the table to find out what jobs were available would have to have that opportunity to at least know that the jobs or the position or the opportunities were available. And that's the problem with the system and the structure of racism as it is practiced in the United States. It denies one subset of people the opportunity to even be aware that the opportunity is there. And that within itself is a heinous crime according to the scripture. It violates the law of God. Thou shalt treat a hireling fairly in their pay. Notice I keep using the word there as opposed to merely the pronoun he or she, because we are all in this together, brothers and sisters. Isn't that right? Praise God. And so my original proposition, if I don't value your life or your existence, I'm not going to tell you about the opportunities that are there. I know a certain group of people that never have wished me a Merry Christmas, no matter how long I work for them. Never wish me a Merry Christmas at Christmas time. And we won't go into that too far, but it goes without saying that the less you value my person, then the more likely it is that you will find a way to defraud me out of what you actually owe me, whether it be financial or whether it be otherwise. Of course, in this capitalistic system, everything is rated or valued based upon its monetary worth. Shameful as that may be. Notice a few examples taken from real life recently. A few years ago in 2015, a young lady named Shemisia Corley was violated by the police on the side of the Harris County freeway there because they suspected that she was concealing marijuana. And this young lady was stripped of her clothing from her waist down, and she was forced down on the ground beside her car. And when the two police officers couldn't find any drugs in the car, they called two female officers to come and do a body cavity search of this young lady, black lady, on the side of the road, on the side of the freeway, in the public view. Thank God it was at least night, but they had flashlights and they were shining all up in this lady's private parts and her vagina, and it was humiliation. And they didn't find anything. And they told her to get dressed and go on about her business. But the outrage and the shaming that this young lady had endured was recorded and was released by the body cams or I think they had cameras in the police vehicle, and it showed, not as graphically as I'm telling you, how they violated this young sister. And that reveals the lack of value placed upon the life of certain individual. I'll violate your rights if I don't value your person. That is why we must teach the value and the worth of every human being. I wish I had a witness. I wish we didn't have to still talk about this in 2018. Of course, like I said, this violation occurred, which I'm referencing, in 2015. It was captured on the dash cam of the police cruiser. But it continues to happen every day, does it not? Here recently, a young lady named Shakisia Clemens, right there in Saraland, Alabama, is her name. And she was almost stripped naked by the police, and she was choked by the police because she wouldn't put her arm behind her back, because she kept asking them, "Why are you arresting me?" I asked the people of this establishment, why were they charging me a 50-cent fee for plastic utensils, which usually are free? And by coincidence, he was at a Waffle House. God bless the Waffle House. And the policeman threatened to break her arm. You can see the video where at certain points he's choking her around the neck and all of this type of thing, all because of the fact that she demanded to see the manager of that particular establishment, because she felt that she was being wronged or defrauded. Remember what I said. If I don't value your person, if I don't value you as a person, I'm more likely to violate all of your constitutionally guaranteed rights and your God-given rights, because I don't value you as a person, as a human being. I'm going to deny you opportunities, as this woman was denied an opportunity to ask the manager why was she charged a fee for those utensils, plastic utensils. You get them at any eating establishment; they're free. They come with inside the dinner or the meal that you have ordered. And so it was a very fair question, but the manager called the police on the young lady, and the young lady quite rightfully asked the police, "Why am I being arrested? You know, since I'm dealing with a civil matter. I'm asking how come I got to pay for something that goes free." And but it was in Saraland, Alabama, and in Alabama, it don't seem like they still don't value black life as they claim that they do, even though they have all of these great memorials up around there in the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, and they got the big memorial for the killing of the 4 little schoolgirls there at the Birmingham 16th Street Baptist Church there in Birmingham, and all over Alabama. They got memorials, but they ain't doing no better. They still do not value black life. They still want to ask the question, what right do you have to challenge what we charge? And the answer is you have every right to challenge. And this was just recently, as we said, in Alabama, maybe last week, as a matter of fact. So that's 2 black women, 2 cases. And then we discussed with you on last week the fact that in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, that the 2 brothers at Starbucks were considered whatever they were considered by the manager, and within 2 minutes of their arrival, the manager called the police, and the police responded, unbeknownst to the 2 men sitting over there waiting on the third of their party so they could conduct their business, because Starbucks prides itself on being a meeting place where you can have a meeting not necessarily in your office, but have a meeting there at Starbucks, informally, casually, over a cup of coffee. But yet these 2 brethren were subjected to the police telling them, you got to go. You got to get up. And when they asked why, they were summarily arrested and escorted out. And even the white people asked, well, why are you arresting them? And the police officer has no justifiable reason. Said, well, you know, they must have called us. They must have been doing something. And the white people said, no, they weren't doing anything. They were just sitting there. So you could be sitting at a place doing nothing, and people will view you as suspicious because they do not value your life. They do not. In philosophy, they teach a doctrine called social worth, and people look at you and they come up with a judgment about your worth based upon how you look. That's why scam artists and con men can run their games so well, because people are taken in by your appearance and they don't realize that they are being hoodwinked, conned, scammed. And so people look at you based upon what you have on, how you look, yes, the color of your skin, because this is the nation that was built upon skin color, and the like. And then they have what you call pedigree, and then they have caste, and then they have class. And when you get through with all of that, you got a problem. And it's not limited to white people. Black people used to have what you call the paper bag test. And you were dark in that paper bag, you was out of luck. As far as any romance with anybody's son or daughter was concerned, that happened to be in that upper class, as we would say. And what's bad about this is that you had 2 cases coming out of Pennsylvania where these these racial disparities or racial indignities occurred. The other one was that there was a group of women who were playing golf. They've been playing golf for 10 years. They had a group called Sisters of the Fairway, and they were well known to the golf club there in Pennsylvania. We're not talking about Alabama. We're not talking about Mississippi or Texas. We said Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, where the city of brotherly love was the first one. And these women were members of the Grandview Golf Club, and they had their own little women's golf league. I don't play golf, but they did. And, you know, they were upper class women doing well in life. They wasn't poor. They wasn't homeless. They wasn't on the street, and they sure didn't look it. But the ire of the male golf club members was somewhat raised, so to speak, because it said the women were playing too slow. Well, you know, men and women always have a bit of tension. And so these fellas went and told the club owners, and the club owner happened to be the son of one of the people that was complaining. And here you got status and class. You know, my status, my class is bigger than your status and your class. And so consequently, the owners of the golf club, golf link, golf course, told these ladies, y'all playing too slow, you're going to have to leave. And the ladies passed up. They were at the second hole. They passed up the third hole to get further in front of the party that was behind them, that was obviously the complaining party. But it turns out that they were not upset about the fact that the women were playing too slow. They were just upset because the women were in front of them, period. And so that's another macho ego thing. All of those little things play into one another. Now, mind you, you can't be pole playing on a golf course. You got to have what it takes. You even have a golf club or a golf ball. If any of you ever tried to play golf, that's a very expensive sport. So there wasn't nobody out there broke. There wasn't nobody out there begging. And there was no caddying going on. Nobody out there with the hat in their hand hoping you will give me something so I can play golf. These people were well-to-do. And but yet the club owners called the police on these black women. Talk about it. You see, even at the upper levels, the higher levels, the threat of if you don't do what I say, I will call the police on you in a minute is still extant, and it is still being exercised. And so quite frankly, that was a standoff. Now the police, to their credit, came and listened to the story, and they say, hey man, it doesn't happen here, we out. But the lady had recorded it on her cell phone because it was so embarrassing and so outrageous for the owners of the club to tell them they were playing too slow. And as a result of that, you're going to have to leave or we're going to call the police. And so now the owners of the club, the Grandview Golf Course, they're in Pennsylvania, the home of Gettysburg, city of brotherly love. So these type of things help us to focus the fact that we have a lot of soul searching to do as citizens of this great nation, and as people of God, and as people who have been historically at one another's throats. We are still not brothers and sisters because we don't treat each other right. We don't value each other's existence. And these cases exemplify that. And unless you think I'm picking on folks, go back to the Bundy case back in 2014 when the Bundy's family were grazing their cattle in a little town called Bunkerville, Nevada. You recall that they had a standoff between them and the federal government. They made the government was seizing their cattle because they had not paid the grazing fees to the federal government for grazing on the government federal land. The fee had grown to $1 million. But in place of this fellow being law-abiding and paying the fee, he called in his partners, his compadres from across the country, and they came down there and engaged in a standoff against the federal government. And the federal government fled. And they didn't kill nobody. The federal government didn't shoot nobody. And then that was in 2014. And, of course, that case is still working its way through the court. A couple of the fellows have been convicted. One got 68 years, but that's only recently. But he's still alive. And these guys had guns, long guns, pointing at and leveled at federal authority, defying, as Abraham Lincoln said, federal authority. In an act of a time of actual rebellion against the government, the United States of America. And but yet nobody got killed. And then the same fellow, Mr. Bundy's sons, in they went down in Oregon a few days later. Let me go to get that. And they had a 41-day standoff. They took over the Malheur, however you pronounce the name, federal refuge, for 41 days. 41 days. They stood off against the federal government, long guns to long guns, before the matter was finally ended. 41 days. Stephon Clark was in his grandmama's backyard. He was killed within 30 seconds of the police coming around there where he was. Probably less than 30 seconds. You heard the policeman yell, gun, 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 and bam, 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 bam. You see, these things stand out. They continue to stand out. Travis Reinking walked into the Waffle House and killed 4 people before his gun was taken away from him by James Shaw, which was a black man. Mind you, that black man had to put that gun down before the police got there, or else the police probably would have killed him. But my point is, Travis Reinking had just murdered 4 people inside of the Waffle House and had fled. And you know the bulletin says armed and extremely dangerous, but yet he was taken without incident, unshot, unscarred, as someone said on the YouTube, unscathed, and it causes you to wonder how a murderer's life, who has obviously committed murder, is treated better than someone who is black, who is only suspicion that he might have a gun. Not a gun showing, but that he might have a gun. Here this fella has used a gun and had a gun in his backpack, and he's still alive. And so my brothers and my sisters, when we have to bring these things before the government or before the society, and people have to sue, they're not suing just because they want to sue, get a payday, because it's suing because they got to make things better. And the only way you're going to make it better is call attention to the wrong. You must make the world recognize, I have been wrong. I have been defrauded. I have not been paid my respect. I have not been paid my due. And I have not been paid my money. And so as I get ready to wrap up this session, you have these glaring cases. Spin it how you will, spinmeisters. These glaring cases keep happening over and over, week by week, month by month, year by year. And as Martin Luther King says, sometimes the cup of endurance runs over. And so that is why we encourage all of us who have been defrauded to speak up, speak out, Don't be silent. Don't be quiet. Make some noise. Let the world know that you have got to get paid. God bless you. May God keep you is our prayer. Hang in there, my brothers. Hang in there, my sisters. Keep fighting the good fight of faith. All right.